This will take just a moment.
Okay, looks like we're live. I see that notification.
It's just about done. Okay, we should be live now. All right. So thank you all for joining us today. Today is in the CHI class. We are the Creative Healing Arts Initiative. I'm a CHI member, and Alicia is also a CHI member today. Our workshop leader, our artist today is Tara, and she's going to be teaching us how to make a earth clay mandala. You want to take over, Tara?
Thank you. Thank you all for showing up and getting your kits, participating. I really appreciate you being here and anyone watching on Facebook Live. Okay. So just a little bit about me really quick. I've been doing ceramics for over 20 years, and I've tried so many different mediums, and I still work with many different mediums, but working with clay is powerful for me because you're working with the earth. It's something that comes from the earth, and whether it's pottery, tiles, sculpture, and you're creating something that is passing through your hands, going through fire. My kiln is right there. Actually has some mandalas in it right now from a recent workshop I did, and that I have one example for you. But I love that whole process. It's just moving through so many different transformations, and so I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share that with you and share my passion with you. So all of you that have kits, just a quick little overview of what is in it and what it's for. So the plate is actually for putting finished work on, and you can return it to either Catalyst or to my home studio in North Stockton, and I will fire it and get it back to you. But the plate's just nice, to have it sitting flat and drying. So I'm gonna move that out of the way for now. The newspaper is what you're going to work on. It helps protect the table surface, and also it kind of moves around nicely when you're working. And we've got our clay here. This is a really neat tool that I designed. It's multifunction. It can be a stamp. It can offer texture. I'm going to show you how you can use it to make different lines and indentations. And it was cut out at the Hatch workshop. They're another really neat organization here in town. We've got brushes for the underglazes, and that's what these are. And they're not going to look the way that they are here. They're actually going to darken and get shiny. And so I have an example here to show you. Make sure I get that in the screen. So I actually blended all the different colors that are in the kits. Most people, they're only getting 3 different colors, but you probably saw that when you picked up your kits. You could choose, there's red, yellow, green, blue. And I sort of blended them a bit, and I put them around the mandala, and this is what you'll be doing. And it doesn't have to be this detailed, what I'm gonna show you, but I used all the same things that you have in your kit and some found objects around my house. But so the blue, you can see it's pretty light, and it darkens once it goes to the kiln. So move that out of the way. And the skewer is actually like a needle tool that you can, all of this is disposable, you can recycle it. The needle tool is for cutting and making different marks. The chopstick is another tool for making different textures and marks. And I mentioned in the flyer that went in to grab a cup of water for your sponge if you're smoothing out edges or just rinsing your brushes. And you've got a little roller that's another thing we recycled some PVC pipe for, and it works well. So before I get started, what I'd like to do is, I actually missed my whole intro. I just realized there was something else I was going to do before all of this, but it's okay, we'll just move on. I have some examples of found objects that I've pulled from just around my house. So I'm going to show you a little bit of some options. So I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see it a little bit better. So I have a lid from a jar just for circles, and a old junk screwdriver that makes some interesting marks, an old bead, screw, nail, bobby pin, can opener, a little button. I found a pen that has an interesting tip on the end. So all of these things actually make really cool marks. I used all of these in making this mandala. And except for one more thing I forgot to grab is a bowl. So if you have something to make a larger circle of, that will help, because there are different circles you can make, different shapes, large ones. You have enough clay to make a large circle or some smaller ones. Here are a few other examples. And these are all the same method that I'm going to be teaching you today. It's white clay. It looks gray, but it's going to be white. And then there are underglazes painted on it, and then we'll carve through, and it will show the white clay underneath once you carve through it. And that's what's going to help make the designs. And if you have a blow dryer or access to a microwave, so you can kind of speed this up a little bit. Otherwise, you have to sit and wait for the underglaze to dry before you can start carving through. So I've grabbed the bowl to also help with the circle shape. Let's move this out of the way. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is lay out our newspaper and get the clay. And again, this is white clay. If it gets on anything, it's not going to stain. When it dries, it's going to be a little dusty, but I mean, I have clay all over my clothes and my house and everywhere, just kind of never ending. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is roll it out, and you want it to be at least 1/4 inch thick. I pre-rolled these out already just to make it a little easier for you, because sometimes if you're rolling when you roll out clay, it's easy to make the edges kind of flatten out, and we want to try and keep it as consistent in thickness as we can. And with clay kind of is like muscle memory. So if you just roll it in one direction, when it goes through the kiln, it's going to curl up if you only roll it in that way. So we want to, this is why it's on newspaper, because it moves around. You can turn it, and we're just going to roll it out different directions. And then I'm going to see, and I actually overpressed it right there and made it kind of thin, but it's all right if that happens. I'm going to flip it over and do the same thing. So I'm not rolling it out too thin, trying to go in different directions. I'm going to do an example and show you some different marks you can make, and then I'll keep working on mine a little bit, but what I'll do is I'm going to put you on gallery view so I can see what you guys are doing and answer any questions that you might have as you move through the process. All right, I think that's about a good thickness. So if you can see it, if you guys, can you see that it's about 1/4 inch. All right, and I'm going to take the bowl, and you can either, like the bowl, since this isn't metal, the edge is kind of, it makes a good indentation. You can also take the skewer and you can just cut around. It might stick a little bit. Just gently pull it away. Now all of this clay right here, I'm going to save it because it's still useful. You can make, oh, I forgot to bring them out, the other examples. You can make little magnets, you can make small little tiny mandalas or pendants. You can still use this clay. Don't scrunch it up, whatever you do. Because the one thing about clay is if you scrunch it up and you trap air bubbles inside, when it goes through the fire, the air expands and it'll blow up the piece. So just set it aside somewhere where it's out of your way, and you can roll it, the smaller pieces you can roll out a little flatter. And yeah, do anything with it. It's just kind of fun to have that extra clay. Okay, so the edges, it's a little bit rough. So I'm going to take my sponge. I'm going to bring some of these over here so they're within view. So it's interesting trying to do this and keep track of that that screen that shows what's actually happening. Okay, so I dipped my sponge in water and I'm going to smooth out the edges. When this is fired and it hardens, it's going to have any edges that come up might be a little sharp. So like some of these edges, I can feel them. They're a little rough and a little sharp. But trying to smooth out what you can, especially in the beginning, is helpful. I've cut my finger before on some sharp edges, so just try to minimize that risk. Okay, set that aside. Now, if anyone's a painter, this might be a little challenging. I've heard from some of my painter friends because they can't quite guess what the colors are going to turn out exactly. And it doesn't blend like paint does, but you can blend the colors. I'm actually going to use primarily black so that you can see the designs a little bit easier. And you want to lay it on pretty thick. Be very generous with the application. If you treat it like paint, like this side right here, and I don't know if you can see that, but it hardly shows up, and it almost works right back into the clay. So I'm just almost globbing it and lightly spreading it around. Not lightly, softly spreading it around so it stays pretty thick. And you're going to do 2 coats of this. If you want the color to be opaque, you'll want to do at least 2 coats. The thicker that this application is, the shinier it is. And let me see if I have an example here. I'll hold up to the camera and see if you can. So there are some parts right in here that are not quite as shiny, and it doesn't look like you can see it on here. This one might be. Oh, there's a good example, I think. Right there on that edge, see it's a little bit dull. It's not quite as shiny right there. That's probably a lighter brush stroke. And then where it's shinier here, this is a really thick dot I just dropped on those edges and then carved around them. So the thicker the application, but you can't do too much at once. That's why I have to do 2 coats, and we're going to paint this on and then use a blow dryer to dry it, or put it in the microwave for about 20 seconds. Might take a little bit more. The only problem with the microwave is it can dry out the whole piece, and the clay will harden a little bit. It won't be as soft to work with, but it still works. I actually do that fairly often when I'm trying to hurry and work on a piece. So don't worry too much about brush strokes, because the second coat is going to be a little more solid coverage. All right, and we tested this out with the blow dryer, and it is kind of loud, but I'm gonna try and do this quick. So what you're looking for when you're using the blow dryer, right now it's really shiny, and we want that shine to dull down a bit. I'm gonna do this away from the laptop. Well, I guess. Let's see, who do I have in view? Yasmin, if this sounds too loud, I can see you. Maybe wave your hand and I'll pull this away if it seems too loud and agitating. Is it okay, Yasmin, or is it too agitating? Because I can move it away from the speaker. Maybe I'll do that. All right. So you can see how it's starting to, the shine is starting to dull up a bit, which is what we want, but we want all of that shine to be away, to be gone. So I'm moving pretty quickly through this. What I encourage you to do, though, is to take your time. I'm getting my piece done so that you can see the process, but I invite you to relax through this, blend colors if you want, take your time. Here's an example, where I blended the colors. I took some more time on this one. I'll show you a few others. This one, I let blending, see if you can see that. You can see some of the, after I put the initial coat on, the second coat, I let the brush strokes of the different underglazes come through and just left it that way. So take your time, there's no rush on this. Part of the process and why the Mandala workshop is one that I do fairly often out of all the workshops I teach, because it's an invitation to slow down. It can be a meditative practice, letting go of what you think you want it to look like, and enjoy just working with the earth and relaxing into it, letting go of any ideas of what you think it's going to turn out like, because it's probably not going to turn out the way you think in your head. Just making marks, doing that repetitive circular motion. And sometimes I've come out here and just taken slabs of clay and made little mandalas for my own personal self, because it just feels good. It's simple. It's not anything that creates stress because I'm trying to make a certain vessel or a commission, And again, I love working with the earth. It's that connection, gets us into our bodies, out of our head, and it's just a different, I think it's a different experience than painting or some of the other art forms I've done. But those are also very much about connection. Art is all about connection. So I think this is, it's still a little wet. I'm gonna try drying it one more time. Okay, there we go. This is more what we're looking for. You can see this sheen is just about gone, and it's good enough. I'm going to apply a second coat. Okay, look at this. Actually, I'm kind of changing my mind about the colors, especially since I'm running out of the black. And I'm going to add a little bit more color to this end, I think. Oh, no, never mind. I have enough black. It's working out. All right, that's pretty solid coverage. So I'm going to dry this again before we get started to making marks. All right, let's make this sure this is in the camera. All right, so there's still a little bit of shine, but it's okay. At this point, this is sufficient. We can get started. So what I like to do first off is start out with something in the center. It's my center point. I've seen some people make almost a grid where they've taken a tool and marked different points, especially if they're into geometry and want to get a little bit more exact points. But I personally like the organic, uneven nature of just starting somewhere and then working around. So here it's hard to tell, but I used a button and the bead. I'm going to bring back some of these extra tools. You can see those. Also, this little fun part in the center can be used as a stamp. So just maybe you can try to press that in, but it's not going to work too great. This will actually work with some of the smaller pieces of clay, the leftover, and you can press those in. Just a little side note. But it can also be used if you want to make a bunch of circles. If you want to make the flower of life, you can. It's just a little bit of a template. But I'm going to start out with a bead right here. I mean, not a bead, sorry, a button. It's a button. I also have used the cabinet knobs, sorry, Let's see, I wonder if I have any right here, that are just round knobs that you can use off of anything. I mean, I have so many different things that I use, like even this was from a hose, so even something like that can be pressed into the center. Here's another button. Yeah, cabinet knobs work great too. Anything circular. I'm going to press this. Okay. And it's okay if some of the underglaze comes up, I almost want that. And so from here, once I get my initial center circle, I'm going to take something else that's a little bit larger just for a bit of a guide for me. There's another circle shape. Okay. So now at this point, this is where it gets fun. This is where we just start to play and make textures. So I'm going to do a few, I'll start out actually with the tool and show you some of the things you can make with this. And there's a bit of a motion to it. Oh, let me have one more suggestion. So you can take a little scrap piece of clay, and this is nice to have. I should have rolled that out a little bit first. Okay. So we're gonna, sorry about that. Because there's a little, like you can practice making different marks, and it can be a rocking motion. It can be a dragging motion. It can be just pressing. And you see how just with that one end, there are some different marks here. Here's a triangle. Making little marks. You can go directly in. It also cuts through. Are you able to think? I think you guys can see all that. Okay. Use this. All right. I hope you're able to see this well. So having a little scrap piece of clay just to test out is kind of nice. And I'm rocking this in, kind of pressing and rocking it up. Make some of these indentations. So those are some examples of different textures. I'm going to go around this. Let's move that out of the way so I can turn this. And I think I'm going to start with 4 points. So I'm going to take this and drag it in, and you see how it reveals some of the clay. I'll hold that up. That little mark. So that's going to be white in there, and then the black will still stay shiny. I'm going to turn it and do the opposite side. And this is a little bit of just a kind of a guide and a marker for me. I like to start with 4 directions usually, but you can do 5, 6 points, whatever you want. I just like to do, I end up doing a lot of directional compass, mandala type designs when I'm doing henna or making these in clay. And I think I'm going to keep going around. So I'm pressing in and pulling back. So you get a little bit of a rise of the clay here, it gives some texture. And it's not even, if you can see that, it's pretty, yeah, it's not even, which I think is great. It's going to it adds to the character, and this isn't about having a perfect mandala. It's not going to look like that. All right, so I have those points made. I think I'm going to try the end of this. This one I'm going to press, and I'm going to press out this time. See if I get a different mark. And your underglazes, when you're done, that's when one of the more pointed brushes for, you can go back in and drop little dots of color, which is what I had. Let's see, where's that other piece? So how I have some, it almost looks like enamel, so just some different colors that I dropped in. All right, let's go to another tool. I'm going to start using, I'm going to use this rounded edge here and make some larger drags. I'm almost cutting in. Let's see if you can see what I'm doing so far. I'm going to turn around and do 4 points again. And I'm going out to that edge, that outer circle that I initially made. And then go back in between again. So we're just going around, taking our time, exploring with different textures. And there's something about committing to a mark. Sometimes I'll make a mark on a piece and I don't really like how it turned out, but I made it. So I'm gonna stay committed and I'm gonna continue it all the way around. And what I found is when I do that, and then I'll add more, because this is in layers. I actually have an example since we have Jimmy here in our group, but these are some of Jimmy's rocks. These are my favorite ones that I have. And if any of you went to his workshop where he taught painting the mandalas, the dot mandalas, it's a similar process working with clay where you start with one, with like your base dot, your base design, and you just go around and then you can add layers and layers. And that's where I got this one, which seems super like decorative, but this, and we're going to get to that, I'm going to show you on mine, but it can be as simple or as textured as you like, and it's layers. I didn't do this all in one go from the center. I started out and it was pretty loose like this one. And then I went back in later and added more little details. So let's try another shape. I'm gonna get, and use the end of the pen. And again, doing just a little pushing out. And you can see a little bit how it has a bit of a star shape to it because of the head of the pen. Okay, let's find something else to show you an example of. I think I work with wood a lot. I also do building and design. And so I find tools like screwdrivers or screw heads, nails, they make some interesting shapes. Even the side of this screw, I think I'm just gonna roll it around, can make a nice little edge. If you can see those little lines there. And please, if anyone has questions at any point, just unmute and ask or put them in the comment section, and Poppy's monitoring that and she'll let me know. Okay, I'm gonna use the end of the screw head, and I think I'm gonna kind of press on. If you can see this So there's some little mounds that formed. So let me turn this. You can kind of see where I pushed the clay up. You can also add right onto that. So I'm going to take this screw and go right on top of that mound. Let's see, I think you can see. This is an interesting process as a teacher to look at the screen while I'm trying to do this. Okay, I think you can see that. And I'm going to press out. And I see another little star feature that is showing up from the screw head. There we go. Okay, it's starting to happen. As you can see, the mandala is starting to come to life here. I want to get a little bit more exposure in the center. That's what I'm feeling. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to just scrape it a little bit. And whenever you scrape with the tool, if you're cutting into it, you want to remove any excess clay on that. I'm going to turn it and get a little bit. You can also turn it to make that more of a. You also want to be aware of that you don't cut too deep into it, where it's too thin, because it's prone to cracking if something's, if one point is paper thin, which is okay. It'll still stay together. You just might have a little crack in there, but we're not making anything that's food safe here, so it's okay if there's a little crack. Then I'm going to use another tool. Actually, where is that? Here it is. Here's the bead. I'm going to take this and see what that does. Some of this is just an experiment as you go along. Yeah, made another mark. I really love this tool, this can opener. I've had for a very long time, but I love the wide triangles. And this one can really push out too. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to start going around and catching it at different points between the little circles that I made from the pen and the screw. And I'm pressing in. You can see this, pressing in and then dragging out just a little bit. And I went a little deep on one of them. Should be okay. But it's a good reminder to not press too deep. It is soft clay. Okay. Let's see, another type of mark that's kind of fun to make are just little dots. So I'm going to use the end of the chopstick. Just make a little dot in between the marks I made. So really, I mean, I'm sure you can see this. We're just slowly moving out and going around and around and just exploring different textures, different marks that the tools make. And if you want to do any sort of etching release, this the end of the skewer works. So I'm going to make think I'm going to make some little flower marks. The only thing about doing this to be aware of is some of these edges here come little clay nubbies that come up when you're etching through. Is those can be really sharp. So if you can pick them off, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. When it dries, when this dries completely, you can take a dry brush. And I'll use just these cheap little brushes, and I'll kind of brush all those off, and it does come right off once they're dry. It breaks off pretty easily. I'm going to make little flower marks. And you can see some of that clay is coming up. If you can, again, try to remove it, but it's not absolutely necessary. Just one point to another, going, whatever you do, it's just going around. And I apologize for those interruptions. I have teenagers. I told them I was doing a workshop in my studio, but I guess still coming in. The joy of this pandemic time is in doing so much over Zoom. Sometimes we're all adjusting and understanding just the humanness of living, family life, being at home. And I know there's been so much stress, a lot lately, especially as things are getting a little more tense out there in the world. And I love coming out here, and I do invite small groups just for socially distance, small, like 3 or 4 people to come if they'd like to work on clay. I find it stress relieving. It's helped my anxiety, and just working with this medium. I know it's not for everybody. There's different artistic mediums, I think, that different people gravitate to, but this one for me has been so healing. Just really with the, it's not just about working with the earth, but it's so tactile. And sometimes we get caught up in looking at a screen or just looking at words and getting in our head. And this amazing medium of clay gets us to connect more with our bodies, get kind of inside, and there's something tangible. There's a push and a pull and a give with clay. There we go. Okay, so I finished my little flower shape there. I'm going to use the end of the paintbrush actually and make some other marks. I'm gonna make some lines coming out from, this is a little bit wider than the skewer, but you can use anything. Actually, I can show you also using the skewer. So it makes a little, it's not quite, you can see that. It's not quite as, the skewer is not quite as wide as the paintbrush end, and you could use anything. You could use a pencil, you can use the chopstick, yeah, anything. But it just makes different kinds of marks. Does anyone have any questions at all? Everyone's doing good. I see when I'm looking around, everyone seems pretty focused. And again, just going around, taking your time. I hope you're all enjoying the process. I am. I've done so many of these, and every one of them is different. Every one of them brings something else out. Sometimes I try to set intentions. It'll have to do with growth, and I want a mandala, or not want, or kind of comes up is a mandala that's more flowering, growth. Sometimes it's more geometric. Sometimes it's just a bunch of lines or just a bunch of dots. So it can be a nice way to for some self-expression around what you're feeling right now in the moment. And on a side note, I do sell bags of clay, and that include firing costs and glazes. And I, especially after putting this together, um, this was my first time creating kits that are going out for a virtual workshop like this. Usually people have asked for clay, they could take it home, make something, bring it back, and then I fire it for them and they'll come back and glaze. But I can also put together kits. If anyone wants to contact me, just private message me and ask if you'd like some clay, and I can get that to you, and you can create something at home, maybe with your kids, for those of you who are parents. Okay, so this isn't quite as detailed as the other one. It's pretty simple. I'm gonna do just a little bit more, and then I'm gonna start looking around, and if anybody would like to pause and show me what they're doing, but if you want to keep going, and if you're all feeling good and no questions, I'm going to use the back side of this tool and make a little pressing on the end. And my cup is underglaze is almost empty, which also offers another shape and edge to work with. So you can find objects around your house. Let's see. So there's a little bit of underglaze in here, but I can still use this end. So I'm going to take this and just kind of rock it into the clay for a little bit more of a scalloped edge. And it's pressing over some of my lines, which is fine. It just adds to the design and the layers. Oops. I'm going to use my little tool again here, the little wooden tool, and make a few other marks on this scallop edge. I'm going to drag it the other way, bring it in. I'm kind of making this up as I go along too. I had an idea of what I was going to do, and now it's just kind of evolving and becoming its own little flower shape. Let's see. I'm going to drag this and make some little, I'm going to get a little more detailed now. So I'm going to show you what I just did. Oops, where is it? Oh, here we go. So right there, I just dragged and made some little lines on the edge, and I'm going to go around and do that on each petal or scalloped edge. So I think you can see what I'm doing. Maybe it's, here, this might work. And I'm not worried about these little extra edges, the little clay nubbies coming up, because I know I can brush those away. So I'm just going to take my time and go around and make different lines. There's some of that is the clay is collecting on the ends. So keep an eye on that when you are pulling and dragging through to remove any excess clay that gets stuck on the tool. See, I'm going to go to gallery view and just take a look and see. Everybody looks focused. It's good. I hope you all are enjoying making your mandalas.
I'm not making one right now, but it sure is cool to watch you make yours.
Okay. And I hope it's giving you ideas. Okay, so I finished those little scalloped edges. I think I'm going to take the end and do a few little tiny dots, and then I'm going to take some of the other colors and drop some little dots of color in there. I don't know if you can see that. Let's see this. Yeah, you can see some of those little dots. Another thing about this, I encourage students to let go and not focus on the perfection of making certain marks a certain way, because this isn't about, it's not so much about making something that looks perfect or looks like it's store-bought. It's more the experience and the process of working with the earth, dropping into this focused space of movement, the circular motion of moving something around and just slowly making different marks. You know, some of the, you look at what a screwdriver or a skewer, and it has new uses and it gives you an opportunity to think outside the box, and then you can take that into other areas of your life and think, when you see an object, how else can you use it? How else, what other functions can it have? And especially in a creative way. All right, I'm going to take a paintbrush now and drop a little bit of color in here. And I'm sure Jimmy too, I'm doing the dots over this, I just suddenly realize that I'm creating something a little bit like what Jimmy does here. I'll show you in this camera. as far as working on a black surface. I usually don't cover it in a mandala in one color. I was only doing that as the example here, but it's giving me an opportunity to practice Jimmy's technique with making a mandala and layering color. And again, the thicker this is, the shinier it will be. I think I'm going to go into these crevices here on this scalloped edge. I think we try so hard in life to make things just right. I do it too, especially with art, any kind of art. I think music, cooking, painting, crafting in any way. And sometimes just being okay with it, with the imperfection, and seeing the maker's mark, seeing that the handmade love that goes into this. It's like some people don't want to sing because they can't sing really well. But what a gift just using your voices, even if it doesn't sound perfect. And we have so much going on in the world and in our lives right now. Just letting go and enjoying something that's just a natural and loose, and trust me, once it's fired, it's going to be beautiful. It's almost well, I can't say it's impossible to make this look, but it kind of is actually. No, it always. I have not seen a mandala that I haven't thought is beautiful. By the youngest student I've had, it's they always just have something unique and have their own little voice in each mandala. Okay, let's see. I think I'm going to add a little more to the edge.
In the chat, Yasmin just asked, she said, no color, just watching, but really enjoying. What color are you using?
Oh, right now this is blue. So this is it looks very, very light, almost white, but it's going to be this blue color. This is one of the blues in the kits. So the kit that I had grabbed, I made a few extra kits, which I will be dropping off at Catalyst probably tomorrow for anyone who wants to do this, who's watching Facebook Live and would like to watch the recording and make one for themselves. And anyone in the workshop here, if you'd like more clay, and just contact me. We can arrange that. I think I'm going to drop some clay or some color in the edge of each of these. Also, you don't have to use any color. If you wanted to make another one and you'd like some clay, one of my friends made a beautiful mandala, and it's just white. It's just white with textures. I probably could have mentioned that. earlier. It's just an option. And I like how sometimes it seeps into the crevices, which can have a neat effect later when it's fired. Okay, I'm going to do some green. And you can continue working on this. Sometimes I'll spend quite a while on a mandala and just work on it later, or come back and add something. Like when the blue underglaze is dry, I might go back and do a few little lines coming through it. I'm gonna drop some green in there. It's gonna blend a bit with the blue. Let's see if I can show you what it did. It almost looks a little bit kind of swirling in there. I don't know if that's going to show up. Here it focuses. But you can see some of the different textures here when I hold it up close. There. And I put black in there too. I mean, it's not just for yin yang if you wanted to do a border on yours. So I went and put black all the way around. You want to make sure don't put anything on the underside, because it's an underglaze which can have another layer of a clear glaze over it, but with thick application it shines up on its own. So this is a single firing process. It's normally with ceramics, you create something out of clay, it goes through an initial firing, and it's called a bisque firing. I have something here, and it's just turns it's just white. This is just white clay, and then I'll go in and glaze this with some of the glazes, and you can see on my wall behind me all the different test tiles I have, and all the glazes I have behind me are different colors. But what you're doing, what you're working with, is underglaze colorants that kind of that shine up just with a bisque firing. So I can fire these one time without having to go back and then fire a second time. So I can get these back to you right away. They are not food safe. It needs to go through the second fire. It really needs to go through the second firing and have more glaze, more clear glaze put on it if you wanted something that was food safe. But this is just for decoration. I will sometimes take these tiles and place them on a board that can be framed, and it can be an art piece. You can use it if you want to put it on, if you do altars, sometimes they're nice on an altar. You can put sage on it. I wouldn't use it as a hot plate. I've had that come up. Some people have asked about that. If you do, we would want to fire it a second time and make sure it's a little thicker too, that it can handle the heat change. But there are a lot of uses for these. Just it can be an ornament. You can make, if you need more clay, let me know. But you can make little ornaments, magnets, jewelry. I think I've stuck a few in plants that just sit there. So yeah, there's lots of different ways to use your mandalas around your home or gifting. Is everyone doing okay? Anyone have questions? Everyone, I see thumbs up. Okay.
Could we mix the colors to make other colors?
Absolutely. That's what I did here. So this is the red. Looks like orange, but it's actually the yellow certificate and the red blended. And the same with this sort of teal color right here on this edge. It's the green and the blue that I blended on this edge. So you can mix these again.
Oh. Thank you.
Well,
Cool. Thank you.
Let's see, I can show you another example. This one's a very simple one. But I didn't hold this one up because these are different colors that I didn't put in it. So this is another example where I very loosely brushed the underglaze around and I kept it very simple. And you can see the button shape in the center. Seems like I have to turn it a bit for you. Let's see. So the glare, okay. And so I dragged the tool through to cut pretty heavy and thick. So the white clay came through a little bolder and more defined. But this is just another example of blending colors, and that one's a little more of a loose mandala. That was a good question. So I'm going to try brushing. So one of the things that'll happen too is that when all of this, there's going to be a little bit of movement, especially if it's a heavy application. There's going to be a little movement with the underglaze. So some of this is going to kind of fall into the crevices that I've made. And we'll just see what happens when it gets fired. Sometimes it feels like Christmas when I open up the kiln because I don't always know how everything's going to turn out. Sometimes it feels like a disaster. I'm not gonna lie. I've opened it up and things really didn't turn out for some of my other work when I experiment with glazes and layering. But I mean, they're still pretty, but sometimes it's not something I can really use the way I had intended, which is another opportunity for letting go and just appreciating the process, the experience, and finding any use or purpose for what I created and what I had originally intended. It's a good practice in not overthinking too. I tend to get in my head a lot, overthink, and earlier on when I would do ceramics, sometimes I would feel frozen. I wasn't sure if I was doing things right. I wasn't sure how to layer, like if the layering was going to be okay or not and turn out. And just had to let go. I'm feeling pretty complete with mine. I think I'm going to just let it be. Actually, no. I'm going to add something else, but I need to dry it first so I can cut into the where I lay down the underglaze. But that's what I've got so far. I can tell that my piece is because I have been drying it and it is exposed to the warmer air here. It's starting to get what we call leather hard. You can see it's not as floppy. And so at this point, when your mandala starts to get starts to firm up like this and dry, you want to be very careful because this is where it can crack if you move it around too much. And since I'm just about done, I'm going to go ahead and transfer it onto the plate very carefully. Try not to move, not to wobble the tile too much, and keep it as flat as possible to reduce the risk of cracking. I'm going to move that out of the way and put it on the plates. And there we go. And this is once you put something here, when it gets to this point where it's becoming leather hard and you get it on your plate, try not to move it too much. Try not to lift it up and mess with it too much, so it increases your chance that it will survive in one piece and not crack, because that can happen. I'm going to use another tool and I'm going to make a different, I'll go this way. And I'm just going to press down with this and make a little sort of triangle edge point here. I think you can see what it's coming up. And the underglaze is still a little wet, but it's okay. It dried a little bit with the blow dryer. Okay, I think I'm gonna do one more thing. I need to dry this a little bit more before I can do the last. I want to show you what the screwdriver does. It makes a really neat star mark. So I'm going to dry this a little bit more. All right, it's drying pretty good, and you can see how it's changing from a darker, it was a dark charcoal color, the black, almost solid black, and now it's a lighter gray color, and it's hard to see the difference between the clay, but it's drying out, which is what I want. I'm going to show you. If you have your if you have a dry end, this is where, well, it's still a little too wet for me to do this, but I'm going to show you a little, just so you can do this later. I kind of brushed off a few of those little ends. You can see them, the crumbs coming off in the plate, and you can just leave it there. Don't worry about, when you let this sit and dry, don't worry about those little crumbs, because when I take this and I put it in the kiln, I'll just take the mandala, so just kind of loosely. And this is also where I'll use the brush, kind of brushes away, which is tricky right now because it's still wet. But I just wanted to show you that. We're getting close to time here. You can also use the wide brush I sent. If it's dry, then you can use that to also brush away some of those little extra little nubby crumbs here. All right, so what I wanted to do is take this little screwdriver. You can see those little star marks. It's just I just like that little, I mean, I mentioned that in the beginning, the four directions, 4 points. I like that. It's one of the patterns I gravitate to. I'm going to do one in the middle too. Oh, that one's really wet. That still worked. Okay. Well, I think we are about done, my friends. Here is my finished mandala. And it looks like everyone is still working on theirs, which is great. I encourage you to continue taking your time, and you can even revisit it tomorrow and add more color. And if it's still a little soft, you can add more texture. And just a quick little side. I'm going to move that out of the way. So these extra pieces, you can just cut them up. I'm going to roll it out a little bit. And again, try to go in different directions. If you're making something really small, it's not going to be too much of a difference. You might warp a little bit, but I think I'm going to turn these into magnets later. And you can paint the whole thing if you want to, or you can take little cookie cutters, you can cut out little shapes, something round. You can shape it. I'm going to press this into the shape here. You can also just roll something onto it. Let's do a larger piece. That's the example.
Yasmin just said, she said, great workshop. Thank you for hosting. Glad to meet all participants. I love mandalas and making them.
Oh, thank you, Yasmin. I'm glad you enjoyed it. There's a little, I can show you a little bit of that pattern, and you can go in and make more designs if you'd like, and even a knife. If you had a knife, you can cut this and make different shapes. And they make cute little ceramic magnets for later. Okay. Well, this was a wonderful opportunity to be able to work with you all. How is everyone doing? I'm going to go to gallery view and take a look here.
I'm doing pretty good.
Everyone's doing good. Oh, I see that. Oh, nice. Is that Noriko or who's? Okay. And let's see, Sarah, how are you doing? Oh, yay, I see that. Oh, beautiful. Oh my gosh. Lovely. All right. Katie, how are you doing? Nice. Let's see where it is. Does anyone have any questions at all? Let's see. Okay.
Okay, so we're all good? Nobody had any questions or comments or anything they'd like to share?
So just as a reminder, if you'd like to have these completed and fired, contact me if you'd like to drop them off at my in my home studio in North Stockton. That might be easier for some people. I'm not sure where everyone is located, or if it's closer for you, there's the Catalyst, and then I will be picking them up and firing them. And remember to when you do drop them off, you can put them in the bag. You can, which is probably going to be a little safer. Place them keep them on the plate. Put them on the plate and put them back in the bag that the kit was in. And make sure you have a piece of paper with your contact information so that I can contact you when it's done. If you are able to place it, it might be a little tricky to put your name on the back, but I think it should be okay. I'll take a picture. What I'm going to do is I'll take a picture of the mandalas with the name and contact info, and then when it's completed, I'll contact everyone and let them know when their pieces are finished. And use up whatever other clay you have. You can make a few other little things. Just remember, don't crumple it up, please, because if you do that like this, air can get trapped in it, and then if you try to roll this out again, there can still be air bubbles in it, and if it explodes, it can ruin other people's work that's next to it. So if this happens, it can just be recycled. You can either throw it away, put it in the garden, or put it in a little bag and give it back to me, and I'll recycle the clay. So I think that's everything. Just as far as post instructions. And my contact information, you can message me on Instagram or Facebook. My email is on the little flyer that I included. So I hope everyone, if you're open to it, if everyone can pause, and we'll just kind of close up a bit, and if we can all take a deep breath together. I always like closing up and inviting everyone to take a deep inhale. If you're open to it, just take a deep breath. And then release and let go, just feeling the gratitude of being here, being able to be creative, work in this little kind of group we're in today. And for anyone who's joining later or watching the recording, just the intention and the energy that is coming through with working with the earth and creating these beautiful mandalas. So thank you all for the opportunity to be here and joining me. Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for joining our workshop today. And thank you, Tara, so much for teaching. It was very cool to see your work, and it looked like everyone had a wonderful time just following along. I'm going to go ahead and end our live and our meeting. And yes, just again, thank you so much for everybody for joining. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.